She cheated on me. I don't know how else to say it. No sugarcoating, no dramatic build-up, just the raw, unbearable truth. My wife, Sophie, the woman I had loved and trusted for nearly a decade, betrayed me. And the worst part? She thought she had been clever about it. It all started with that damned business trip. Sophie had always been career-driven. It was one of the things I admired about her. The way she threw herself into her work with relentless ambition. I had never been the jealous or controlling type. I encouraged her to chase her dreams, to take every opportunity that came her way. So when she got selected for an exclusive overseas conference, I was genuinely happy for her. At first, the night she told me, she was practically glowing with excitement. Her hands animated as she described the prestigious event, the networking opportunities, the panels she'd be speaking on. They only pick a handful of people each year, she said, her eyes shining. This is huge for my career, Noah. I smiled, kissed her forehead, and told her how proud I was. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a small, nagging thought whispered, "Who else is going?" I didn't ask, not then. It wasn't until a few nights later, when she was packing, that the thought returned. She was folding clothes with a meticulousness that was unlike her. Usually, Sophie packed in a rush, throwing things haphazardly into her suitcase and sorting it out later. But this time, she took her time. Too much time. I leaned against the doorway, watching her. "So, who else is going on this trip?" I asked casually. She didn't look up. "Oh, a bunch of people from the company. Anyone I know?" She hesitated, just for a second. If I hadn't been watching her so closely, I might have missed it. "My boss," she said finally, still not meeting my eyes. My stomach tightened. "James Carter." I knew about James. Everyone in the company did. He was the kind of man who commanded attention when he walked into a room. Charming, confident, the type who thrived on power. Sophie had always spoken about him with barely concealed irritation, complaining about his high expectations, his late-night emails, his relentless work ethic. But here's the thing about Sophie. She only ever obsessed over things that mattered to her. And she talked about James a lot. I forced a chuckle. "Didn't you say he was unbearable?" She laughed, but it sounded forced. "He is. But it's just work, Noah. I'll barely see him outside of the panels." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. So I ignored the knot in my stomach and let her go. I should have trusted my gut. The first red flag came 2 days into her trip. Sophie and I had a habit. Whenever we were apart, we always made time for a late-night call before bed. No matter how busy things got, we found a moment. But that night, my phone stayed silent. I checked the time, 11:45 p.m. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the time zone difference had thrown her off. Then, at 12:30 a.m., a text finally came. "Sorry, babe. Long day. Exhausted. Call you tomorrow. Love you." I stared at the message, my pulse a slow, steady thud in my ears. She had never missed a call before. Not once. Something was wrong. I just didn't know what yet. I barely slept that night. Sophie's message replayed in my mind over and over again, each word taking on a different meaning the longer I stared at it. Long day. Exhausted. Call you tomorrow. Love you. It was innocent enough, but it didn't feel like her. I told myself I was being paranoid. Work trips were unpredictable. Maybe her meetings ran late. Maybe she really was exhausted. I nearly convinced myself, until the second red flag appeared. The next day, I woke up to nothing. No text. No missed call. No good morning message like she usually sent when we were apart. I checked my phone so many times that I started to feel ridiculous. By noon, I caved and called her. She answered on the third ring. Her voice rushed. "Hey, babe. Sorry, it's been crazy here. I was just about to text you." I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone tighter. "Yeah? What's going on over there?" In the background, I could hear voices. Laughter. A faint clinking of glasses. "Oh, just a networking lunch," she said quickly, as if she already knew what I was thinking. You know how these things are. So many people to meet. So many conversations. I frowned. "It sounds loud." She let out a breathy laugh. "Yeah, it's a little lively. You know me, though. I'd rather be back in my hotel room watching Netflix. That was the moment I knew. Sophie was lying to me. Not because of the noise, not even because she'd missed our call the night before. It was the way she over-explained, the way her voice was just a little too bright, too careful. It was the way she tried to sound like the same Sophie I knew, but it was all wrong. Still, I played along. Sounds like a blast, I said, forcing a chuckle. When will you be free to call tonight? There was a pause. Just for a second. Not sure yet. There's a gala thing tonight. More networking. A gala. Oh yeah? Who's going? The whole team, I think. I bit my tongue. She didn't say James' name, but I knew. Before I could ask anything else, she cut in. Babe, I have to go, but I'll call you later, okay? I love you. I waited a beat. Then two. I love you too, I said, but I wasn't sure if I meant it anymore. Then she was gone. I sat there for a long time after the call ended, my phone still clutched in my hand. My heart pounded in my chest, a steady, angry rhythm. I knew I was losing her. I just didn't know how far gone she already was. I spent the rest of the day trying to ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut. I told myself I was being irrational, that I was reading too much into things. Sophie was at a work event, surrounded by colleagues, doing what she needed to do for her career. I had no proof of anything, just a feeling. But feelings have a way of burrowing into your chest and refusing to leave. That night, I waited for her call. I told myself I wouldn't stare at my phone, wouldn't obsess over every passing minute. But as the hours ticked by, my patience wore thin. By midnight, she still hadn't called. At 12:30, I texted her, "Hey, you okay?" No response. By 1 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I called. It rang, and rang, and rang. Then it went to voicemail. I put the phone down, my hands clenched into fists. I wasn't an idiot. She saw my message. She saw my call. Sophie wasn't the type to ignore me. At least, not before this trip. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe she drank too much at the gala. Maybe she crashed early. But even as the excuses piled up in my mind, I couldn't make them fit. Something was wrong. And then, by pure chance, I found out just how right I was. I was scrolling through social media, half distracted, half hoping for a distraction, when I saw it. A post from one of Sophie's colleagues. A group photo from the gala. I clicked on it instantly. There she was, standing near the center, dressed in a sleek black dress I'd never seen before. She was smiling, holding a glass of champagne, her makeup perfect. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was the man beside her. James. His hand rested on her lower back, fingers just barely touching the fabric of her dress. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable. But I noticed. And the way she leaned into him, the way her body tilted just slightly toward his, like it was the most natural thing in the world, made my stomach twist. I clicked through the other photos in the post, my pulse hammering in my ears. In every single one, they were close. Not in an obvious way. Not in a way that anyone else would think twice about. But I knew my wife. And I knew when another man was touching what was mine. I sat there, staring at the screen, my whole body rigid with the weight of what I was seeing. She hadn't called me, hadn't answered my text, hadn't even checked in, because she was with him. And suddenly, the work trip didn't feel like work at all. It felt like a lie. I didn't sleep that night. The image of Sophie with James burned itself into my mind, looping over and over again like some cruel, silent film. The way she leaned into him. The way his hand rested just a little too low on her back. The way she looked, carefree, happy, completely unaware that I was sitting at home, staring at my phone, waiting for a call that would never come. By 3 a.m., I was done waiting. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I clenched my jaw, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. She was with him. I knew it. I felt it in my bones. The rational part of me wanted to wait, to hear her out, to give her a chance to explain. But the other part, the part that had been ignored for too long, wanted the truth, and I wanted it now. I opened my laptop and logged into our phone account. Sophie didn't know I had access to it. She handled the bills, but once, months ago, I had needed to check something and created a login. It took me less than a minute to pull up the records. And there it was. Call logs. Messages. A number repeated over and over again. At all hours. Early mornings. Late nights. The frequency had skyrocketed in the weeks leading up to the trip. James Carter. I felt like I was going to be sick. I clicked on the timestamps, scanning through them with a growing sense of dread. The pattern was unmistakable. The late texts when she was working late. The calls that lasted for hours when she was at the gym. The unanswered calls from me while she was on this trip, right before she sent me some half-assed excuse about being too tired. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This wasn't suspicion. This was proof. I stood up, pacing the room, my heart slamming against my ribs. I needed more. I needed confirmation. And I knew exactly how to get it. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the messaging app. Me, hey. Just checking in. Miss you. I stared at the screen, waiting. Nothing. I checked the time, 3:12 a.m., which meant it was just past 10 p.m. where she was. She wasn't asleep. I swallowed the lump in my throat, then typed again. Me, are you still out? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing. I let out a bitter laugh. She saw it. She hesitated, and then she chose not to answer. That was all I needed to know. I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. If she thought she could lie to me, if she thought she could pretend this wasn't happening, she was wrong. I wasn't going to let this slide. No, I was going to make damn sure that when this was over, she lost everything. Morning came, and still, no call. I wasn't surprised. The moment she saw my message and chose not to answer, she made her decision. But she didn't know I had already made mine. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. I knew who it was before I even looked. Sophie. I let it ring twice before answering, keeping my voice calm, steady. Hey. Hey, babe, she said, her tone too bright, too rehearsed. Sorry I didn't call last night. The gala ran late, and by the time I got back, I was exhausted. I stared at the laptop on my desk, the call logs still open. She wasn't exhausted. She was busy. I leaned back in my chair, forcing a casual tone. Yeah? Looked like fun. There was a pause, so quick that most people wouldn't have caught it, but I did. Wait, what? I smiled, though she couldn't see it. I saw some pictures online. Looked like a great event. You looked amazing. She let out a nervous laugh. Oh, yeah, it was nice. I barely got to enjoy it, though. Too much schmoozing. Lies. Who'd you spend most of the night with? I asked, letting my voice dip just slightly, just enough to make her hesitate. She exhaled, like the question annoyed her. You know, the usual people. My team, some clients. I'm mostly stuck with Kelly and Priya. I closed my eyes for a second. Kelly and Priya were in the picture I saw, but James was the one with his hand on her back. Not James. I asked, my voice deceptively light. Another pause. Well, yeah, obviously he was there, she said, her voice carefully neutral. I mean, he's my boss. Right? Silence stretched between us. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to gauge whether I suspected anything. And I wanted her to wonder. I glanced at the call log again. Last night, between midnight and 2 a.m., 6 calls to the same number. James. She wasn't at her hotel. You okay? She asked after a moment. You sound off. I almost laughed. Off? I was barely holding back the storm, but I swallowed it down, just like I always did. Just tired, I lied. Didn't sleep much. I'm sorry, babe, she cooed, her voice soft, affectionate. I'll make it up to you when I get back, okay? I almost felt sick. It was easy for her. Too easy. Lying. Pretending. Saying all the right things to keep me pacified. But not this time. I forced a smile into my voice. Of course. I can't wait. Because soon, she was going to realize something. She wasn't the only one playing a game. She thought she had me fooled. That was her mistake. For the rest of the day, I played my part perfectly, texting her like nothing was wrong, responding to her messages with warmth, even sending a miss you when I felt particularly cruel. I wanted her comfortable. I wanted her to think she had control of this, because soon I was going to take it all away from her. By the time evening rolled around, I had a plan. A simple one. Ruthless. Effective. Step 1. Confirm the affair. Step 2. Make sure she knew that I knew. Step 3. Take everything from her. At 10 p.m., I opened my laptop again. Sophie had no idea that I had access to her cloud storage, something she had set up years ago when we got new phones. It automatically backed up all her photos, texts, and emails. She never turned it off. A few clicks, and I was in. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Photos of her trip, shots of her hotel room, some generic work emails. But then I saw it. A new folder. It was named something innocent, conference notes. But when I opened it, my stomach twisted. Inside were pictures. Pictures of her and James. Some from the gala. Ones that hadn't made it to social media. Ones where he wasn't just resting a hand on her back. He was holding her waist, leaning in close, whispering in her ear. Then there were the private ones. The ones that confirmed what I already knew. Sophie, in her hotel room, in a robe, smiling at the camera in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. And the final nail in the coffin, one single message screenshot, saved in the same folder. James, last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. I stared at the screen, the words blurring together. There it was. Undeniable. Cold. Real. My wife was sleeping with her boss, and she was arrogant enough to keep a record of it. I didn't feel pain. Not anymore. The anger had burned through me, leaving something colder in its place. It was time for the next step. I copied everything. Every single file. Every message. Every picture. I saved it all to a separate folder on my computer, then backed it up onto a USB drive. Then I picked up my phone and called Sophie. She answered on the second ring. Hey babe, I was just about to call you. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Yeah? How's the trip? Ugh, exhausting. I can't wait to come home. Lies. Well, I've been thinking, I said, keeping my voice light. Why wait? I was looking at flights, and there's an early one tomorrow. I thought I'd surprise you and pick you up at the airport. Silence. Then, oh, that's so sweet, but you don't have to do that. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the damning images on my screen. I insist. She hesitated. Noah, I don't want you to go through all that trouble. Really? Because James will be dropping you off at home? It's no trouble at all, I said, voice smooth, almost amused. In fact, I think it's the least I can do. She laughed nervously. You're acting weird. Am I? More silence. I let it stretch, let her feel it. Let her wonder. Let her panic. Then I finally said, I'll see you soon, Sophie. And I hung up. Because the game was over. And she had no idea what was coming next. I barely slept that night. Not out of grief. Not out of heartbreak. But out of anticipation. For the first time in weeks, I felt clear-headed. Focused. The weight of doubt was gone. Replaced by something sharper. Purpose. Sophie's flight was scheduled to land at 3:45 p.m. By 3:30, I was already at the airport, parked near the arrival gates, my hands steady on the wheel. I wasn't there for some dramatic confrontation. I had no intention of causing a scene. No, this was about control. I was going to watch her lie to my face. And then, when she least expected it, I was going to tear her world apart. At 3:50, I saw her. She looked the same. Maybe a little more tired, but still effortlessly put together. Her long coat cinched at the waist, her hair swept up in a loose bun. She carried herself with the same quiet confidence she always had, the same ease that had once drawn me in. For a fleeting second, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with. But that woman was a lie. Sophie spotted me before I could fully compose myself. Her face lit up, her lips parting in surprise, then softening into something almost relieved. I could see it in her eyes. She thought she got away with it. Not yet, darling. She walked toward the car, pulling her suitcase behind her, and slid into the passenger seat. Wow, you really did come, she said with a small laugh, reaching over to touch my arm. That's so sweet. I let her. For now. Of course, I said, smiling. How was your trip? She exhaled, leaning back into the seat. Exhausting. Amazing. but exhausting. I nodded, pretending to focus on pulling out of the parking lot. Bet you're glad to be home then. So glad. She smiled at me, soft and affectionate, the way she used to when we were still us. I missed you. I almost laughed. Instead, I reached for her hand and gave it a small squeeze. She squeezed back. And just like that, I knew. She really thought she had fooled me. I kept the conversation light on the way home. Let her tell me all about the panels, the keynote speakers, the funny little stories from her colleagues. Not once did she mention James. Not once did she slip. She was good, but I was better. When we finally pulled into the driveway, I took a slow breath, steadying myself. The real game was about to begin. Go ahead inside, I said, forcing a yawn. I'll grab your bags. Sophie smiled, leaned over, and kissed my cheek. You're the best. And then she disappeared through the front door. I watched her go, the smile slipping from my face the second she was out of sight. I opened the trunk, grabbed her suitcase, and the USB drive I had stashed underneath it. Because tonight, Sophie was going to learn what real exhaustion felt like. Sophie was already in the kitchen when I walked in, humming softly as she poured herself a glass of wine. She looked so at ease, so comfortable, like she hadn't spent the past week betraying me. I set her suitcase down near the stairs, my fingers brushing against the USB drive in my pocket. Not yet. I walked over to her, watching as she took a slow sip of wine, then turned to me with a lazy smile. God, it feels good to be home. I nodded. Bet it does. She tilted her head, studying me. You're being weird. I let out a soft chuckle, shaking my head. Just happy to have you back. She grinned and stepped closer, wrapping her arms around my neck. I missed you, she murmured, pressing a kiss to my jaw. I let her touch me. Let her hold me. Let her pretend. Then I whispered, Did James miss you too? Her entire body froze. I felt it, the way her fingers twitched slightly against my skin, the way her breath hitched for just a second before she pulled back, forcing a confused laugh. What? I didn't smile, didn't blink, just watched her. You heard me. She frowned, shaking her head. Noah, what are you talking about? I slipped my hand into my pocket, feeling the smooth edges of the USB drive, my pulse steady. Then, slowly, I pulled it out and held it between us. Sophie's eyes flickered down to it, then back up to me. Her smile wavered. What's that? She asked, voice quieter now. I didn't answer. I just walked past her, over to the living room, and plugged the USB into the laptop sitting on the coffee table. Sophie followed, her footsteps hesitant. Noah, what? The first image popped up on the screen. A picture of her and James at the gala, his hand on her waist, her lips near his ear. A moment that should have been a fleeting memory, saved forever. Sophie went completely still. I clicked to the next one. A photo from her hotel room. She was in a robe, smiling at the camera. Not for me. And the final piece. A screenshot of James' message. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. Silence. The kind that stretched too long. Then Sophie let out a shaky breath. Noah, it's not what it looks like. I turned to her, tilting my head. Really? Then explain it to me. Her lips parted, eyes darting across the screen as if searching for an escape. I was drunk. It was a mistake. I laughed. Actually laughed. You were drunk? That's the best you've got? She swallowed hard. Noah, please, I love you. Love me? I repeated, stepping closer, my voice calm, detached. You love me? She nodded quickly. Of course I do. I leaned in slightly, just enough to watch the panic flicker across her face. Then tell me, Sophie, did you love me before or after you fucked your boss? Her mouth fell open. Noah, please. You lied to me. My voice was eerily steady. You planned it. You hid it. You looked me in the eyes, touched me, kissed me, while he was still on your skin. Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. You didn't just hurt me, Sophie. You destroyed us. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Because I wasn't done yet. Because this was only the beginning. Sophie was unraveling right in front of me. Her lips trembled, Her hands clenched at her sides as if she was trying to stop them from shaking. I watched her, silent, waiting. She swallowed hard. Noah, please, it wasn't. Don't. My voice came out sharp, cutting through her excuse before she could finish it. Don't insult me by lying again. Her face crumpled, but I didn't feel sorry for her. I wasn't the one who did this. She did. How long? I asked coldly. Her brow furrowed. What? How long has it been going on? She hesitated. A second too long. Noah, it doesn't matter. I let out a slow, humorless laugh. Oh, it matters. She inhaled sharply, as if preparing herself. 3 months. Lie. I tilted my head, studying her. Try again. She flinched, her eyes flickering with something close to fear. 6 months. Still a lie. I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward her. Her own call logs. James' number, over and over again. A pattern that went back 10 months. Her breath hitched, her own betrayal staring her in the face. Would you like to try again? I asked softly. She exhaled shakily, her eyes darting everywhere but at me. Then, in the smallest voice, almost a year. A year. 365 days. 52 weeks. Of lying. Of sneaking around. Of letting me love her while she gave herself to another man. I clenched my jaw, exhaling through my nose, forcing down the sheer rage clawing its way up my throat. Tell me. My voice was calm, even. Did you ever feel guilty? Tears spilled down her cheeks. Of course I did. Then why did you keep doing it? She opened her mouth, then closed it. No answer. Because there was none. Because she chose this. Again, and again, and again. I let silence stretch between us, let her feel the weight of it. Finally, I spoke. I have one last question. She wiped at her face, looking at me with red-rimmed eyes. Anything? I stared at her. Did you ever love me at all? Her entire body shook. Her lips parted, then closed. She had no answer. And that told me everything I needed to know. I let out a slow breath, turning away, running a hand over my jaw. Noah, she sobbed, stepping forward, reaching for me. Please, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll do anything. I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman, my wife, the woman I had built a life with, and I felt nothing. Whatever love I had for her, whatever warmth once existed in my chest, it was gone. She killed it. So I stepped back, out of her reach, and I said the words that sealed our fate. You already did enough, Sophie. Then I turned and walked away. Because we weren't fixing this. We were finished. I walked out of the living room, leaving Sophie standing there, broken, sobbing, desperate. I didn't care. She could cry all she wanted. It didn't change the fact that for an entire year, she had played me for a fool, that she had come home to me with his touch still on her skin, that she had smiled in my face while she whispered his name behind my back. I made my way upstairs, my mind sharp despite the storm raging inside me. I didn't need to think about what came next. I had already planned for this moment. In our bedroom, I opened the closet and pulled out a suitcase. My suitcase. I started packing. Shirt, jeans, toiletries, essentials. I wasn't staying here. Not another night. Sophie must have heard the sound of the zipper because within seconds, she was at the door. Noah, wait, what are you doing? I didn't answer. I folded a shirt, placed it neatly in the suitcase. You're leaving, she choked out. Noah, please, please don't do this. I zipped up the bag, turned to face her. What exactly do you think I'm going to do, Sophie? Her lips trembled. We can talk about this. I laughed, shaking my head. Talk? I gestured toward the USB still plugged into the laptop downstairs. We're way past talking. She stepped closer, reaching for me. I'll end it, Noah. I swear. I'll block him. I'll never speak to him again. Just don't leave. I pulled my arm back before she could touch me. You already ended this, I said coldly. The moment you let him have you. Her face crumpled, fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. I love you. I stared at her. No, Sophie. You love yourself. Her breath hitched. And that's why you don't get to have me anymore. I grabbed my suitcase and walked past her, down the stairs, through the front door, into my car. Sophie chased after me, barefoot on the pavement, sobbing, pleading. Noah, please. We built a life together. I started the car. She slammed her palms against the window. Noah, don't do this. Don't throw us away. I turned to her, meeting her wild, tear-streaked gaze. You threw us away. Then I pulled out of the driveway and drove off, leaving her behind. I drove without a destination. Just miles of empty road, headlights cutting through the darkness, my grip locked tight around the wheel. I should have felt something. Grief, regret, pain. But all I felt was relief. I was free. No more lies. No more pretending. No more sleeping next to someone who had already given herself to another man. I pulled into an empty parking lot near a small motel, my heart still hammering in my chest. I wasn't ready to go to my brother's place yet. Wasn't ready to explain. I just needed time, space, a moment to breathe. As I sat there, staring at the dark sky, my phone buzzed. Sophie. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again, and again. Finally, a message popped up. Sophie. Noah, please. Come back home. Let's talk. Then another. Sophie. I'll do anything. Just don't throw this away. I clenched my jaw, staring at the words on the screen. She still didn't get it. This wasn't something she could fix. I turned off my phone and leaned back against the seat, closing my eyes. Tomorrow, I'd call a lawyer. I'd start the process of ending this for good. Sophie was about to learn what it felt like to lose. Because I wasn't just walking away. I was making sure she lost everything. The next morning, I woke up to reality. The motel room was dimly lit by the early sun. My suitcase sitting in the corner like a reminder of everything I had left behind. For a moment, I just breathed. No Sophie. No lies. No weight pressing down on my chest. Then my phone buzzed. I hesitated before turning it on. 12 missed calls. 6 voicemails. Too many texts to count. I ignored them all, except one. James Carter. I opened the message. James, we need to talk. I smirked. Do we? I typed back, we really don't. Then blocked his number. I already had everything I needed. I spent the next few hours setting my plan in motion. The divorce attorney was first. He was efficient, precise, ruthless. By the end of our call, I had a strategy in place. One that ensured Sophie wouldn't walk away unscathed. Then came my final move. I still had that USB drive. And it wasn't just for me. Sophie built her career on trust, on professionalism. James? He had a reputation to protect. A wife. A company. A board of directors that wouldn't tolerate scandal. By noon, I had sent everything to the right people. By the evening, his career was crumbling. Sophie called me one last time. I picked up. Noah, please, we can fix this? I let out a slow breath. No, Sophie. We can't. She sobbed. I didn't mean to. You did. Silence. Then I ended the call. Blocked her number. And just like that, she was gone. I walked outside, breathing in the crisp evening air, feeling lighter than I had in months. Sophie thought her betrayal would stay hidden. She thought she would keep everything. But she forgot one thing. I wasn't the fool in this story. I was the one who walked away. And I didn't look back. The end. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel.